The head of talent at Onramp. If you have already applied, you've probably received half a dozen emails and text messages from me. And if you've written to the support line, I'm the one who's been answering all of your questions. And if you come into the interview round, I'll meet you there as well. We're so excited to be hosting our second cohort with Twitch. The first cohort was such a success. We had so much fun working with the apprentices who are now, wow, almost about halfway through. Has time moved that quickly? But regardless, we're so thrilled to be launching this second cohort. So I know that you're all mostly excited to be talking to the engineering team and other members of the team at Twitch. So I'm going to let you all go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll move into the questions and answers. So Mark, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and then pass it on to the next?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dana. Appreciate it. I'm Mark. I'm an engineering manager at Twitch, and I manage our mobile viewer community and platform teams. And my background has always been in mobile. I started doing iOS back in 2010 and then Android, and now I'm a manager, so I can't do much except manage now. So thank you. And then I'll pass it over to Simi.
Cool. Hi, I'm Simi. I'm a full stack engineer on the viewer experience channel team. So I work primarily front end, back end, you name it. I interned here at Twitch back in 2019 when I was in college. I went to the University of Virginia, studied computer science, and I've now been working full time for a year, and it's been awesome. So I'll pass it on to Iris next.
Hi everyone, I'm Iris. I am a software engineer on the video distribution team. We essentially just make sure that the video gets to the user correctly through our content delivery network. I was an intern at Twitch in 2019 as well with Simi, very fun, back when internships were in person. And yeah, I've been here about a year, and I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, now I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hey everyone, I've been with Twitch for about a year and a half or so. I've been in recruiting for about 10, and recently in the last couple of months moved over to a program manager role. So I'm actually on the Twitch side running the internship program as well as apprenticeship program, and love working with Onramp so far. We've had an exciting journey.
Great, thank you so much. And when Gabriella joins us, we'll have her do a quick intro as well. So let's come into some of these questions. I did just want to clarify for the participants that are adding questions, if you have any questions about the application itself, please just email me at support@onramp.io and I can answer any questions there. For now, because we have the time of the team members at Twitch, I'd love to answer questions that are more specifically related to what it's like to work at Twitch or the program as it's involved with Twitch. So let's start off with, let's see here. Here's a great question. So how do you determine if someone is a good fit for Twitch and especially the engineering team?
Sure, I could take this one. I typically try not to think about like good fits, but like ads, I think is I guess the one nomenclature shift. Would say I think the things we look for, especially in apprentices, is ability to deliver results. I think is like a clear one of like, hey, like we are working with you, we are going to give you a problem, and can you work through it, break it down, solve it, and deliver said solution. That is like fundamentally like the most critical thing in the early part of someone's career as like a software engineer. We'll say from like the personality side, I'd say there is nothing we look for around like, you know, you need to be a fan of Twitch or you need to be a gamer. Like that is, it's actually good to not have like a homogenous like workforce for like various reasons, and some of them aren't even squishy. They're like more diverse workforces just produce more revenue and such. So typically what we look for though is curiosity, grit, things that serve one well when they're new to something and need to deliver something, which goes back to the first point. So are you curious? Can you work through problems, or do you just kind of get stuck, spin your wheels, and kind of fizzle out? So I'd say those are the two big things, both from like a technical standpoint and then from a more like personality perspective.
Great. Next question is, how is success measured in this role? Will there be certain KPIs that will be defined to measure performance?
Mark, do you want to take that one? And you can kind of add to it if you want.
Yeah, sure. So typically for apprentices, we don't really pick like a KPI, like you need to move this like business metric, mostly because I'd say like at Twitch, we do a lot of projects and our intention is to move all the metrics up, and sometimes they don't move up, and it's not the fault of like engineering or product. It's just some ideas do well and some don't. It's kind of like a gamble at times. We'll say like what we are looking for is, again, back to my previous answer, like what we can control is like you are given this task, you are expected to break it down, deliver it at quality, and kind of like take feedback from your mentor who's working with you. So again, going back to the initial question, like being able to take feedback well, and this doesn't just apply to apprentices, like even with my manager, I constantly have conversations around like, hey, like what could I be doing better? Where do I need to grow? And being able to just kind of like say like, yes, I have opportunity to grow and room to grow, and just saying like, thank you for the gift that is feedback is critical. So we do checkpoints that I'll kick it off to Kelly, who can kind of walk through like what those look like. But yeah, I'd say there is no KPI. It just kind of goes back to the fundamentals of like taking feedback well, delivering results, and doing it at quality.
Plus one to what Mark said, we do actually also do checkpoints throughout your time here as well. We do a midpoint calibration as well. That's something that's really big to kind of figure out, are you on track to convert over to coming full-time into the program? I'm sorry, full-time into Twitch after the program. Some of the non-tangible stuff too is communication with your stakeholders, communication with your team. Are you building trust and growing those relationships on top of obviously learning the technologies and hitting different milestones or goals that have been set for your team? And also just being able to, like he had mentioned before, like seeking out assistance, like when you need help, but not getting so distracted by that, but trying to find different ways or finding different solutions. And if at a certain point you get stuck is when, you know, you start to lean on some other folks like your mentor and manager, because each of you will have a mentor and manager that will help guide you through the program as well, that you'll meet with regularly. And again, it's just being able to take that feedback and then actioning on that feedback and making those changes and iterations to your work.
This next question is, oh, actually, Gabriella, would you like to introduce yourself to the participants? Hi there.
Hi there. I was trying to get into the Zoom. I'm Gabriella, and I'm a software engineer on the mobile community team. I do Android, and Mark used to actually be my manager. So yeah, glad to be here. Thanks
so much for joining us. I'm just sharing the questions and then just doing like popcorn style response. So if you hear anything and you want to jump in, go ahead. The next question is for Iris. What was your experience like being in the intern program with Twitch?
It was actually really, really fun. Like I interned, like I said, with Simi and Gabriella as well. I think we were the first intern cohort that Twitch really had. I really appreciated the cohort style because then we all got to like meet, do a lot of activities together and kind of bond with one another. When I first applied to Twitch, I kind of thought it was like a long shot, you know, and then when I finally got like the call back and started the interview process, one of the things that I always remember is Tom, the recruiter, our main recruiter, being very nice, very friendly. And then when I did my next couple interviews, everyone was like really nice, really friendly. And I always remember thinking like, okay, this is fishy. Like, why is everyone so friendly? Like, okay, there has to be something up. And then when I finally started internship and came into the company, I realized that overall Twitch is just a very friendly workplace. And everyone's super down to even like sit down and have a coffee with you, even if they don't know you at all. So yeah, I think overall I had a great time, not only because my team was really helpful in like, you know, onboarding me onto our services and our systems, but also like being able to interact with people outside of my team and just grab a coffee with anyone was really nice. So I had overall a really great experience. And my favorite part about my internship was for sure is like the food. If you guys ever make it to the office, the food is amazing.
Thanks so much, Iris. The next question is, can you tell us about some of the successes the last Onramp Twitch cohort had and some of their challenges?
from a success standpoint, I can kind of speak to that. Right now, we currently have a cohort that's on site with us and working with us, and we've had a lot of success so far. The class is not finished. We're actually about midway at this point. I would say from the feedback, though, we've gotten some amazing feedback from both sides, meaning the apprentices have said they've been learning a lot. They've been growing immensely in their technology and their stack in terms of what they're learning. They've evolved with the amount of work and the amount of just not intensity, but just the complexity of what they're working on has increased over time, which is what we expect to happen because they're getting, used to what we're working on. They're getting faster, they're getting more efficient. On the flip side, we've gotten some really great feedback from the managers and mentors that they've been really on track. They've been really engaged. They've been really excited about everything that they've been working on. And I do checkpoints myself as well, outside of the managers and mentors. So I always do checkpoints, just make sure that you guys are feeling engaged and you're enjoying the community. Even just stuff outside of the actual work itself. I want to make sure that this is a really good experience, whether you choose to stay with us or not, because it is a two-way street. You want to make sure that you're getting out of this the same thing that we're getting out of this as well. And you're getting all the questions answered along the way. And really at the end of the day, are both parties learning as much as they can from each other to make this a success. I would love to say that we have converted everyone over. We're not there yet, since we've only had one class, but I think we're definitely tracking in the right direction based off of the feedback that we've gotten so far. We're about to have our midpoint calibration meeting with all the managers and mentors. And from the feedback so far, we have some really great success so far from it.
And to add to that, given I actually work closely with two of the apprentices, I do see a lot of progress. I'm seeing the projects that they do from an engineering standpoint. It seems that they're really doing well, and they're also having the mentorship that they need to succeed from our teammates. So just wanted to throw that in there.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
That's really great to hear. I love hearing that. Thanks for sharing that. How is your full stack apprenticeship program balanced between back-end and front-end work?
Mark, I'm not sure I'd be the best to answer this question.
Yeah, I personally can't speak to it because I'm a manager on the mobile side, but I can imagine for people I have, full stack engineers I have worked with, it's basically a mix of like, hey, are we standing up a new service or modifying an existing service to power a front-end experience? If so, there will be either a larger investment in standing up a new service or maybe like a smaller investment in tweaking an existing service, then like making the change in the service, making the changes on the edge, which is like GraphQL for Twitch, which is like, the public service, and then everything goes to GraphQL, and then actually doing the front end work. So my guess is it's probably still more front end heavy because like sometimes we're just iterating on existing things, adding functionality to existing things. But I'd say it's probably a mix and probably one of those like case by case examples. There could be a team that's just spinning up a ton of new things because there's a new feature we're building and we need to build out like a robust service that can scale to all of Twitch's users, which is non-trivial. So it's not like going to Heroku and being like, cool, I have an instance now. So yeah, that'd probably be like my gut answer from my experience, but I'm not an expert here. But I'd say it depends is probably the short answer. Apologies for the non-answer.
As a full stack engineer here at Twitch, I can't speak about the apprenticeship program itself, but you definitely touch like everything in the code base pretty much. And so your scope isn't really just limited to one specific part of the software. You get to see how all the different services kind of interact with each other, and the code changes that you make go live to a very large user base. So it's really exciting to be able to see your code go into production and to see the kind of end-to-end changes that you make. So I think obviously it varies like per team and per apprenticeship program itself, but I think the breadth of work that you can do is truly incredible.
Thanks so much. The next question is, what's the workflow like for different engineering sections and how do they interact with each other?
I'll be happy to go on that. Given that I work on community and a lot of the things we work on are very feature heavy. So it means we have to work cross team with like product managers, backend engineers, designers, different business stakeholders whenever we're creating a new feature on the Twitch mobile app. So we do have to like, the scope of our like projects, it depends on the project, but it also like makes us like understand like the whole idea behind the product details, the whole idea how, let's say, the backend is designed and how all these things operate and interact before we kind of like decide and come up with a technical like idea or path on how we want to work on this on the mobile side of things. So we take about like a couple weeks to really flesh out like the project and before we start working on it, because because it's going out to millions of users, we want to take our time to really like break things down before pull things apart, before pulling them back together and then working on them and then coming out with something that people want. So that gives us a general idea of like how we all work together at Twitch, at least on the mobile end.
I would add, like, so I'm on like a product engineering team, so exactly the same. We talk to product managers, front-end engineers, back-end engineers, the entire stack. And something that I've really enjoyed is just there's so many different tools that we use for different use cases. And I think working in like a larger environment like that gives you a lot of exposure, and you can kind of choose like how deep you want to dive into learning about AWS or learning about internal tools that we have or solving, platform issues that we might have. So it kind of gives you the opportunity to have a lot of autonomy in terms of where you kind of want to specialize in your career and in your role as you think about that.
Thanks so much. I love this next question. What keeps you working at Twitch?
I can go first. So I came from Google and Facebook, which is obviously a lot larger in terms of scale and scope. However, I felt like I couldn't have a lot of things to work on or come up with a lot of new ideas. A lot of stuff had already kind of been done, or you were trying to iterate on something. It was a very small piece. Where I feel like here, if you have an idea, you can really grow and scale it out to be your own, and you can own it. And nobody stops you from doing that. Obviously, we want you to get your core work done, and that's really important. But if something isn't working, people are so willing to allow you to have that flexibility and time to do it. Even something as fun as we didn't have a veterans guild, meaning an employee resource group. I was talking to the leadership and I was talking to my colleagues, and there was enough folks involved, and we were able to create a new veteran employee resource group for us internally. And so there's just different things that haven't been done yet that if you have an idea, you're able to take that and run with it. And so many people are willing to step in and support you with that. I was really worried that taking on an extra task outside of my regular job was really going to impact that. And my boss really reassured me to say, hey, no, like this is still really important. This helps our community. This is something that you're passionate about. And if you need help with it, let me know. And she was like, this is something that I can actually talk to and speak to during your performance review. This is something that is still part of your work. So it's just being able to have that autonomy and not feeling like you aren't able to do things that you're passionate about, even outside of your work.
I would like to reiterate what Kelly said. Like, this is actually my first like industry job. I'm a very new engineer. I just graduated about a year ago from college. So I don't want to say that I didn't have expectations, but I do want to say that Twitch has raised some really high expectations for me if I ever do move to another job. I feel like I had a really supportive team coming on to Twitch, and also like really great managers. I think I finally understood what a really great manager is. I used to think like, oh, my boss is gonna be scary or like something like that, but my boss has always, or like my managers have always been super approachable and super like cool to sit down with and talk about the issues that I'm having at work or the things that I want to grow on. Another thing that I wanted to say is like, yeah, there is a lot of opportunity for growth. I don't think I've ever came onto like sat down on my desk and been like, oh, I totally know what I'm doing. I don't. There's also, I'm like learning every day. I'm always running into like little bugs or little things, but I think like Kelly said, that support that you always have to like look to the side to someone or talk to someone about this problem and they can totally help you decouple it is the reason that I keep working at Twitch, because I know that I'm not done growing, but I know that I have so much opportunity to grow here. So yeah.
I would also say, like, going back to the passion point that like Kelly was talking about, not only is there a lot of room for like engineers to explore things that, you know, makes them curious and that they want to solve, I think something that kind of makes Twitch special is that like our community is very energized about like the stuff that we're doing and like the products that we're developing. And so to see that reflected also in like the people that we work with, I think everyone that I've had the pleasure of working with has just been really, really excited about the stuff that they're doing and why they're doing it. And that kind of passion I found is like hard to replicate in other companies. And so when I was even doing the internship, like part of the reason why I loved it so much was because the code that I was writing ended up getting released into production, and that felt really meaningful. And it was, you know, it was nice to say like, oh yeah, I like touched a part of the website and it helped like make a positive difference in some user's life. And I think that kind of impact is a big reason why I love working and why I see myself working here for a very long time.
Yeah, and to add to that, like one of the reasons, like, you know, I come to Twitch, this personally speaking, is because of my team. My team they're really amazing people, really helpful. Like, especially as a Gorian engineer, the kind of mentorship I've had has been tremendous. You know, Mark used to be my manager. He's an amazing manager. My current manager now is an amazing manager. My current teammates are amazing teammates. And especially in a time of COVID where it's kind of like the experience is very different. Having a great team is really what makes your working experience in the time of working from home actually a much better experience. So that is really like a major plus of something I know like Twitch has, and I don't know if many companies have.
This next question is, what's the most important non-technical skill you possess or want your teammates to possess?
I'd say this really depends. I think you're basically asking what everyone's superpower is, the thing they lean into that kind of gives them their edge. And I'd say it is unique to everyone, and my answer will be biased based on like my personal strengths and things that I feel contribute to my success and I value. So I will say this, but also say caveat, like this is not the answer. It is a path. I personally value ownership and initiative a lot. Folks who can identify problems and say like, hey, this is my problem. If it impacts me, it's not someone else's problem, and really own the problem and deliver it. You know, Kelly mentioned in the previous question, like taking on passion projects. I think I've been complaining to my manager since 2017 about like, hey, Lyft has an apprenticeship program. We should have one. I think it's really great. And I think finally last year, I'm like, we're doing it. Wrote the proposal. The list of companies that were doing apprenticeships is much longer. And Onramp certainly helped connect me with a bunch of, point me to a bunch of them where I looked them up. And so I'd say even this apprenticeship program was something that like my manager and I, like we drove, got executive alignment and got funded. So those are things I value, but honestly, everyone has like different strengths, and it's really about identifying your superpower and then figuring out like, how can I leverage that in the role I'm in? And not so much trying to force something that doesn't feel natural, because when times get tough or you're stressed, you will not fall back to those behaviors. So identifying those, leaning into those. And for me, it's ownership and initiative, but it's different for everyone. And it does take time to identify. And I didn't identify this. My manager was like, hey, like you show a lot of ownership. And I'm like, oh, I guess you're right. So let me keep doing that.
I would say assume positive intent would probably be like something you can't really like quantify, but because we're in a virtual environment and a lot of folks are in different offices, even if we weren't in this virtual environment, we are doing a lot of things over Slack. And I think sometimes things can get lost in translation. We might be moving really fast. And by what I mean by assume positive intent is, you know, if someone says something, don't assume that they're either attacking you or telling you to do something or that it's negative. And if you do think that, then jump on video. And then eventually, you know, in person, like pull them to the side. I think so quickly in the tech environment, we get used to, you know, texting and Slack and things like that, and can kind of take away the connotation of the conversation. So just be aware of that. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned with working with colleagues and moving as fast as we are.
The next next question is, what makes Twitch different than other big companies that offer apprenticeships like Lyft or Microsoft, either culturally or technically?
I can take this one if you guys want. And then if you want to, maybe like Simi or Iris or someone wants to join in on this one. I can tell you from the internship program as well as the apprentice program, we're really high touch compared to a lot of other programs. We do events. We have a lot of leadership who have a lot of the support with us. We have the ability to make changes as well throughout the program and into our next programs. We already are making changes to the program from the last class to this class. So we have a lot of flexibility. We make sure that we listen to all of our apprentices as well. Not only do obviously the managers and mentors give you feedback, we're also taking feedback from the apprentices as well. We do a pulse survey so that we understand, are you guys getting out of the program what we anticipate? Are you feeling like you're a part of the community? Do you feel like you're being able to be engaged or you're getting the support that you need? So it's a two-way street. And we take all of that feedback and we listen to those and then we implement those. And what I mean by like high touch is that you do have a manager or a mentor for each apprentice. And so that's something that is dedicated to help support you throughout your entire journey here. The other thing is you have somebody like myself who will also have one-on-ones with you as well and want to make sure that, whether it's a bi-monthly or monthly cadence or whatever it might be, that you're getting what you need out of this program. So in general, I think it's just making sure that you have all the resources that you need to be successful here, because the goal is to bring you on full-time at the end of this apprenticeship program. And we're doing what we can from a headcount perspective ahead of time, talking to different teams and making sure that this is something that works for both sides.
Yeah, as someone who's been on the other side almost of like the internship program, I can definitely agree and like echo that same statement where throughout the entire program, if I felt like there were any like needs that weren't being met, or if I had like any questions about resources that I needed help with, like I could easily reach out to like my manager, my mentors, like my peers in the cohort, anyone really. And I felt very supported while I was there. And I think another thing that kind of separates Twitch from other companies is just, again, if Impact was very meaningful to me when I was researching internship opportunities and full-time opportunities. And I think something I really enjoyed about the internship program was just all the projects were very meaningful and that they were used at some point. So I know in some other previous internships that I've had, the feeling was kind of like, okay, I coded something for like 3 months, but was it really used? Is it really anywhere in service? I don't really know. And I never felt like that was my experience here at Twitch. And it felt like the work that I was doing was valuable and it was helpful, and it would go live eventually and make a positive change. And that was really exciting and energizing to me. And that's what I loved about being in the intern.
And to add to that, even though Twitch is a big tech company, it doesn't feel like it, because I feel like the way our teams are structured, or just how we are, it feels like a small company where you can kind of grow, have good relationship with your employees, and really get that career growth you need. So I think that's a huge plus, especially if you're like trying to get into something or break into tech or anything like that. I think that's the ideal environment versus just being in a large company where everything is like everybody's just operating on your own. Essentially, I have friends who work in those spaces, and sometimes they wish they had more mentorship, more guidance in what they were doing. So I say that's a huge plus. Also, I have to hop out. I'm on time off, so I'm out with my family soon. So thank you so much, guys. And I hope you apply, and I hope to see some of you soon.
Thank you, Gabriella. We really appreciate you joining. Enjoy your time off.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, Gabriella. So we've had a few people ask this question, so I'll ask it. Well, it's been asked two ways. Like, what does a typical day look like for an engineer at Twitch? And what would a typical day look like for an apprentice at Twitch?
I can start off with what my day looks like. This morning, I sat down at my desk, just write down, okay, like what the things that I need to do for the week or for the day. I try to break them down by the day, like today. As we're talking right now, I'm monitoring, so sorry if I keep looking at the set. I'm monitoring some deployments to, some of our servers, making sure that's going fine. And I have like 2 other tasks to do, and then get through them, submit code reviews for my peers to look at and make sure that those get approved. Like I said, I'm a backend engineer, so a lot of what I do has to do with like deploying the changes onto our servers. And then take lunch at a reasonable hour when I don't forget that I have to eat. And then come back, go onto some meetings. My team likes to do this thing called tea time, where like we'll take 30 minutes of our day to just sit down with each other and talk about nothing, like anything at all, not work related specifically. And sometimes we do help each other like debug stuff in there. And then, yeah, attend the meetings that I need to attend and wrap up at the day, like around 5 or 6, and get on with, you know, my life. But I think the thing that always messes with me is knowing when to stop, because sometimes I get too like caught up in a task and I'm like, oh no, just one last thing, and next thing I know it's like 6 or 7 and I'm like, whoa, we need to stop here. But overall, like a pretty like 8 to 9 hour workday.
I think this next question is really interesting. What keeps a Twitch engineer up at night?
I would say, generally speaking, engineers have, say, pretty good work-life balance. Certainly if you're on call, you could be getting woken up at night if there's like a big event going on and it starts taking things down. Recent recollection, it seems like most things happen during the day. You know, I'd say like our big streamers are out of like US or European time zones. So when things go down, like usually everyone's awake. As far as like philosophically, what keeps folks up at night, I would hope not much. I think, you know, I think it's healthy for someone to enjoy their job and be invested in it. But at the end of the day, be able to be like, cool, like work is done. And I know it's really hard now with work from home, because it's literally like I step out that door and it's like, cool, now I'm a dad and I have to do dad stuff. And it is hard. And I sometimes take 10 minutes before I step out to be like, okay, work's done. So I would hope not much. But certainly like folks can get really into problems. Certainly there's no one correct way to do certain things. So sometimes you can get into discussions and healthy arguments with folks around how we should be doing things. But I would hope most folks say like, not much. I go to sleep and then I wake up and I'm energized to go to work. And at the end of the day, I clock out. So yeah, but Simi or Iris, if I'm being too generous, please check me.
No, I feel like you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I think maybe the only thing that would keep me up at night is just I've recently discovered new like streaming channels as a result of working on this channel page. So that definitely has taken up a lot of time, where I've like recently discovered otters that swim like 24/7. So when I'm off, typically I tend to watch like a couple of streams like that, but nothing too work related, if I'm being honest.
I am a little bit of a warrior. Sorry, guys. So sometimes I don't take stuff all the way to bed, but I do try. Like sometimes I'm out of work and then I'll be like doing something in the kitchen and I'm like, wait, I think I know how to do that one thing. And instead of like going all the way back to like, you know, opening, sometimes I do open my computer. I'm guilty. I'm sorry. But sometimes I'm like, okay, let me just write it. Let me just write it down. And like, I have a little notebook right here. And then I just write it down and then just leave myself like a little note for tomorrow. But I do try not to like take anything to bed, because yeah, like you really do have to learn how to separate work from home, especially working from, yeah.
I'm wondering if anybody on the panel, and if not, I can answer this maybe in an email, can speak to diversity at Twitch, whether that's, you know, percentage of female developers and even like non-traditionally educated developers, and just like those sorts of statistics.
Unfortunately, we can't share statistics. However, I can tell you this is something that is really important to all of us across the entire community. Whether you're in recruiting, program management, as a manager, whatnot. As a whole, you know, we want to make sure that we have an inclusive environment, and that's backgrounds that could be just different styles of work experience, wherever that might come from. And that's exactly why we're on this call, because we want folks from a non-traditional background and give them an opportunity to showcase their skills and to be a part of our community. I don't know if the rest of the folks on the call want to add to this, but this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I'm a veteran as well. And so like, these are things that I think about to help fellow veterans, to help really anybody in any community that didn't get a chance to necessarily go to a 4-year school and did some kind of boot camp, some kind of program, some fast-paced exercise that was, something that was really intense, because I think there's so many folks out there that have learned so much and just didn't get an opportunity to go back to go to a 4-year school or couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. There's no kind of essential or like, one background that all engineers come from, or that, there's that one size kind of fits all. It's definitely not true. I've met engineers who are amazing at what they do and they come from completely different backgrounds and experiences than I do. And it's always amazing to just work with people who have such diverse skills and can really make, the work environment just so much better. And there's just a lot of opportunity to learn. So I completely echo that statement. Yeah.
I would like to say that we also have guilds within Twitch, which are essentially like little groups for a specific, I guess, title that you may identify with. I identify as a Latina and as a woman, so I'm part of those 2 guilds. And they always really made me feel supported at all times, especially because when I came to Twitch, I did realize not only at Twitch, but in tech, Latinos are not a very big face that you see around. So someone scoped me through this and was like, oh, we have a Latino guild. And that was like really nice to get to speak Spanish with other people. So yeah, like there are like guilds to help you feel supported in that sense.
The next question is, what inspired you to be in the career field you're in now?
I think so. When I started off in college, I was gung-ho, like pre-med all the way. I was convinced I was going to be a doctor. And in the first week, I realized I hate blood, I hate needles. Like this was not the career path for me. And something I was taking just a bunch of different courses that first semester, and something that I loved about computer science was just the problem solving aspect. So there's always a problem to solve, and there's never a right way or doing it. And there's a lot of opportunity to kind of exercise creativity and the solutions that you choose. And that's something that just kind of spoke to me. I thought it felt very elegant, and it's really, really good when you finally figure out like what your bug was that you've been dealing with since forever. And I think I felt very satisfied in computer science and in solving the problems that I have. And again, like impact is something that matters a lot to me. And I felt like I could gain that by, helping create products that people love and they can benefit from, and that really makes them happy and excites them. And so that was a pretty big reason for why I chose computer science and why I've still loved being a software engineer and will love it for the next few years at least, for sure.
So what are some steps taken by leadership for a developer who is underperforming?
I could take this one. It's a managery question. So performance management in a nutshell is really about expectation setting. So this answer applies both to like people who are performing, underperformers, and people who are overperforming. And it's really just about expectation setting. So being really clear about like, hey, this is what success looks like in this role. And when someone's performing or overperforming, it's really easy to talk about these things. Obviously, when someone's not meeting expectations, I think those are conversations that your initial gut is like, I don't want to have this conversation. This is just a one-off. But I think it's really important to be open and honest, because how these things might end up playing out if you avoid these conversations is, oh, these things have been going on. I've been talking to it about my manager, and eventually they're like, okay, like we need to start having like more serious conversations. So it's really about expectation setting. Now you're like, what are the expectations? I'd say one of the benefits of Twitch being a part of Amazon is for any, or at least most job families, so like manager, engineer, Amazon had these like pretty lengthy documents, but really there's just one page that's important that has like a rubric that says like, here are the dimensions through which we assess an engineer or a manager. And here's what it looks like at the different levels. So when Kelly mentioned like the midpoint evaluation and that stuff, we are literally just taking that rubric and saying like, hey, how are these apprentices measuring up against these different dimensions? Give you an example, like execution is one of them. And I think that's the one, going back to my first answer, one that we index really heavily on, around like, hey, can this person execute? What does execution look like at this level? So yeah, so if someone's struggling, it's one, making sure they know is critical. And that's all about expectation setting. And then really trying to understand and dig into the why. If this person was doing well, they're not doing well now, are they burning out? Is there something going on in their personal lives? Obviously, it's not my job to pry and get into someone's personal matters, but sometimes it's like, hey, it seems like something's bothering you outside of work. Maybe you should take some time off and sort it out, and giving people the space. So yeah, so not going to say I just immediately jump into like, oh, you're not meeting expectations. We're humans. We come to work. We're people. We have personal lives. Sometimes our personal lives go well. Sometimes they don't go well. So yeah, it's a really complex question, but I hope that at least kind of covers at least two facets of it around expectations and kind of doing root cause analysis.
Thank you. The next question is kind of two questions smushed into one. The specific question is there flexibility to change focus following the apprenticeship program? So for example, if somebody came into the apprenticeship front end, would there be flexibility to transition or grow into a full stack role later? But there was a larger question asked as well, just about like general growth opportunities within the company for employees.
I can speak to the first part at least. So when I was interning, I interned as a front-end mobile web engineer. And then when I started full-time, I started as a full stack engineer. And so I would definitely say, like, if there is a different area that you want to explore, like that is also something you can talk to your manager about, depending on the team that you're in and the role that you're in. And you could obviously, like, if you've started off in a team, I think there are opportunities to like transfer to different teams that are on too. You could, you know, apply and like that. But I would definitely say that there's a lot of growth opportunities in a lot of areas for an engineer to kind of choose what it is that they want to kind of be a team expert on. That's something that's true on my team, at least, where, you know, the people I work with are brilliant in every way, and they do that because they're passionate about like some specific part of technology that I might not know anything about, but they know a ton of. And it's always really fun to see that, you know, that's what they chose to grow in, and that's how they chose to kind of apply their skills across different projects and teams, and to collaborate with other people to grow in the ways that they wanted to.
I would say +1 to everything that that you just said. I think one thing that I would add is that we have to consider headcount, though. Just from like a recruiting and program management and just headcount planning, we obviously are trying to allocate headcount to the folks that are coming on board, which are aligned to these skill sets. So initially, you might come in as like a full stack or a front end role, but throughout your career is when you can shift and move into other things. I'm a prime example. I came in as a sourcing recruiter. I'm now in a program manager role. Very quickly that changed for me. Some of it has to do with time, some of it has to do with performance, some of it has to do with change of organizations, things like that. And so there's a lot of opportunity to shift and change, especially in like a smaller organization like us, compared to some of the places that I've been at before, where they make it so you have to have like a specific amount of time in your role before you can move outside of it. There's a lot more like gray area to that.
I would like to speak on the growth opportunity part. Like for me, I just finished up a project, so then I'm like, you know, I'm supposed to move to another project. So when I sat down with my manager, he was like, "Oh, what do you want to work on next?" And at first I was like, "What do I even want to work on next?" I was a little insurance stuff, but then as I kept digging around to the projects that we're going to pick up and stuff, I was like, "Okay, I really like this one." And then I sat down with him and I advocated and I gave him like, "I want to work with this project because I feel like it'll make me grow in XYZ, blah, blah, you know?" And I think advocating for yourself and, you know, pushing for the things that you want to grow on, or, you know, the roles that you may want to foresee in the future. Like I said, I think one of the first things I told one of my managers is I see myself wanting to be a manager, not anytime soon. I just started, I barely have a year, you know, but in the future, maybe like 5, 6, 7 years from now. And I think just even putting that on the table for it to be visible is something really important. So.
The next question is, how big are your front end and full stack development teams? And what do you like or dislike about them being that size?
I would say that it kind of varies per team, per organization, per role. There's no like one correct size or not. I've worked in small teams, I've worked in large teams, and the dynamics are different, but they're both, I mean, honestly enjoyable. In smaller teams, you get to know people like quite well, and depending on the roles, you might have like different tasks. But I would say overall, there's again like there's no one size fits all. It kind of just depends based on the team and what you're working on. But it's been good on both sides of the coin, so no complaints here.
Are there any projects that Twitch is working on that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I can discuss some, at least on the mobile side. Obviously, every year there's developer conferences from Apple and Google. I think particularly Apple does a good job building hype around some of the new stuff they're announcing. So if you watch WWDC, which is their developer conference, they did put Twitch as a partner who's going to support SharePlay. So excited to work on that because I kind of have to, because our name was up there. And there's a bunch of other cool features, and it's exciting because it's an event and the developers get really energized about it, and they're like, I want to check this out, I want to check this out. So keeps things fresh for engineers, especially you build features, and after a while it's a lot of pattern matching. You see the problem, you have solved it before, you kind of reapply the pattern with taking the caveats into example. So we're excited about some of the new iOS stuff coming this fall in iOS 15. So yeah.
For Simi and Iris, what was your biggest takeaway from your apprenticeship? What advice would you give those who may be about to embark on this new adventure?
Simi? Okay. So we were interns, just to clarify that. I think my biggest takeaway overall was not being scared to ask questions. I mean, I think as I came back full time, I kind of had to like relearn that a little bit more. But when I was an intern, I think a lot of the time I was scared that like, oh my God, if I ask this question, they're gonna know that I don't know that. And I realized that to grow as an engineer, you have to ask those questions that are a little scary or may sound dumb in your head or whatever you may want to think. So just being like really open about what you do know and what you don't know is very helpful. And like I said, has helped me now in being like a full time engineer. Aside from that, I think I took away a lot of like close like interpersonal relationships. I not only made really good friends with Simi, but also with like my managers and my mentors, and just being able to like network and take those like relationships outside of work is really nice. So
I think you read my mind, Iris, because that was almost exactly what I was going to say. But I think to add on to that, I think a really valuable skill that I learned was just learning how to advocate for myself and for my own growth. And that's something that you can really only get with experience. And I think like learning to say that like these projects are interesting to me, or I want to develop in XYZ ways, like how do I get there? And being able to have those like very open conversations with your mentor and your managers, and learning how to seek that kind of guidance and help will take you so much farther than if you just try and stumble along and figure it out on your own, because guaranteed you'll get there faster with someone else's kind of advice and help. And I think there's also just a lot of opportunity to learn so much while you're here. Just you can interact with so many different people, and again, you can network with so many different managers, mentors, etc. And there's just a lot of knowledge you can kind of absorb just by virtue of being in the apprenticeship or internship program. So definitely take advantage of that. Don't be afraid to schedule one-on-ones or meetings with other people just to learn more about their role and what kind of work they do and why it excites or energizes them. I think that was a really important takeaway that I took that's been really valuable for me so far.
Great. The next question is, what are some great traits that you've seen, I'm guessing this is for Mark and Kelly, in an ideal candidate from a non-traditional education background? So someone coming in who doesn't have a CS degree.
What was the first part of that question?
Yeah, like what have you seen from candidates that have non-traditional backgrounds that make them stand out, something that's great about them? I think the broader question, I've seen it asked a few ways, is like, what's it like to work with those candidates, and like how successful are they?
Yeah, I'd say at least from the initial cohort, the candidates I spoke to, I think the ones that we were inclined to move forward with, it's not so much like what's on your resume. I think part of this whole apprenticeship thing is kind of turning the traditional hiring thing of like you submit a resume, someone looks at it, they like come in, we ask you like random technical questions. It's not how we run this program because that's really not setting up folks who have non-traditional backgrounds for success. And that's the whole point of this, is how do we kind of like find folks who have talent and can do work. So I'd say the thing that we, and certainly the Onramp folks will walk you through this when you go through the process, is you all will like create a project. And then I would say the folks who do well, like understand really deeply like their project and like the decisions they made during that project to get where they are. And I'm not saying you're going to understand React fully down to like at a level that like a senior engineer may, but like you at least like, you know, dove a little deep on certain parts and solve the problems and then are able to speak to them. I'd say that's really what the process indexes on, not so much like, hey, like your background or like what you did outside that. I feel like those you already start introducing, I think, biases and things that we're trying to eliminate from this process.
Had a few questions about the impact of COVID and working remote. Is there an expectation that Twitch employees will come back to the office? Is it now a remote first culture?
So from our side of the things, this next class is going to be considered remote. However, you will have an opportunity that if you live close to one of our locations that you can go in. You have to follow the same standards as everyone else. Whatever restrictions that might be at the office in terms of, you know, masks and just cleanliness and things like that, that they're already trying to do at every single office. We anticipate the future classes for the apprenticeship program to hopefully be potentially on site. We've been trying to be cautious of this, as we know that some folks, because we did a survey and wanted to make sure all across Twitch that we were hearing what everyone was saying, you know, who felt comfortable coming back. And if you didn't, you know, was that more of a hybrid approach, or do you want to be fully remote? And they were offering different options for that. And so we're just now stepping into what that's going to start looking like. You know, are we going to start having events together? Are we going to, do people feel comfortable traveling, or do we need to start waiting until 2022 to start doing those types of things? Mark, you may have maybe some more insight into some of this just because you manage some folks, and I'm sure you've gotten asked some of those questions.
Yeah, I'd say even though things are, I guess I can't really say they're trending in a positive direction with like recent news on like the latest variant, but I'd say we're still in kind of a wait and see approach. So I've told my team like, hey, like the people and places team at Twitch have discussed potential timelines, but I've told folks like, you can come back when you're comfortable and ready. And so there is no timeline for at least my team and my teams. So I'd say that's probably true of most folks. Like we've been working at home for the last 15 months. And while I would love for things to trend in a very positive direction and resolve themselves as soon as possible, still a long way to go, I think. So we're just being flexible and not forcing people into situations they're uncomfortable with. And even if Twitch, which it won't, came out with some policy that like everyone has to come back on X day, I'd probably come up with some way to work around that policy. Don't tell the people team that. But yeah, folks are really reasonable at Twitch, and so I say like we're not. There's no expectation for folks to come back to the office soon. There is an option, like Kelly mentioned, but I think a lot of folks are still in the wait and see approach to see like, is it safe, and am I personally comfortable going in?
Great. So we're pretty much coming up to the end of our time here. The last question I'm going to ask, it's been asked many times, is there any one piece of advice you would give to somebody applying to this role?
Yeah, I can open. Just really the work you'll do as part of the application process with Onramp is really the most important thing. Like the process and our interviews are pivot all around that. So really focus on that and know it as well as you can would be my guidance.
I might also add, it's, interviewing is always a two-way street. So just make sure that, when you're applying for Twitch, that it's a role that you can see yourself growing in and that you can see yourself happy with, and the people that you're interviewing with are people that you would actually want to work with, and not to feel compelled to say like, oh, I have to work here because I interviewed here. Like that's never, ever true. And so just, feel free to ask like whatever questions you want while you're interviewing to get a gauge of what the team culture is like, company culture is like, and make the kind of best decision that you can from those discussions.
Great. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. We so appreciate your time and for answering all these questions. To the participants, there was something like 250 questions, and I know we didn't get to them all, but hopefully we covered some of the main points and some of the questions that came up time and again. If you did have questions about the application itself, a lot of them can be answered just by going over to the role page, scroll down and look at the FAQs, and that'll answer a large number of the questions that I did see. And if you have any questions about your specific application, just email me at support@onramp.io and I can help you out there. Thank you so much again. And we're so looking forward to moving forward with cohort number 2 at Twitch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
everyone. Best of luck.
Bye.